Welcome to the Three Martini Lunch. Grab a stool next to Greg Columbus of Radio America and Jim Garrity of National Review. Three Martinis coming up.
Hey, very glad you're with us for the Friday edition of the Three Martini Lunch. So glad you're here. We have good, very bad, and crazy, but also pretty much bad for our third martini today. Our first martini deals with Hunter Biden. So naturally, parents, you might want to hit pause. We are dealing with what Hunter Biden was actually doing when he was telling the IRS that he couldn't pay his taxes and was dishonest about how much he owed them. So last night, Jim, we got the news that Hunter Biden is facing 9 more counts based on tax law violations to go along with the gun charges that he's facing. This is all after that plea deal fell apart a number of months ago in Delaware. And basically, the charges are you didn't pay your taxes on time, and you didn't pay what you were supposed to pay, and you lied about why you didn't pay as much as you were supposed to. So there are 3 felonies here. Count 6, man. That's a movie all in and of itself about what he was doing with this money. And basically, he was spending a lot of it on hotels, on drugs, definitely on women, Airbnbs in very ritzy areas like Malibu. But he was claiming that a lot of this was business expenses. For example, on page 38 of the indictment, there's this line: the defendant falsely claimed that money paid to women with whom he had personal relationships was wages, reducing his tax burden. Well, I suppose they're wages in a sense, Jim, but not exactly related to the official Biden business, which is not part of an indictment yet. His dealings overseas, never registering as a foreign agent and so forth. So we would like to see more accountability in that area. But what we are seeing is basically that these are the things that these 2 IRS whistleblowers were saying months and months ago. And then they, of course, were demonized by the media and the Biden administration and Capitol Hill Democrats and so forth. But basically, Gary Shapley and Joseph Ziegler, what they said way back when is pretty much the meat of this indictment.
Yeah, you will rarely find a more sordid indictment for not paying your taxes. This thing has almost as much sex in it as the Starr Report. And I guess like the conclusion you come to at the end of this indictment, again, it's not a conviction. He's, Hunter Biden still has his day in court. My colleague, Andy McCarthy, and the occasional guest host of this program, points out that all of this, like nothing changed factually wise from 4 months ago when Weiss was happy to hand wave this away as part of a plea deal. And Hunter Biden and his lawyers, in their endless wisdom, held out and wanted a better deal and wanted immunity from all future prosecution, too. A deal that was always unreasonable for them to ever expect to get. But you read this and you conclude that Hunter Biden is either unimaginably shameless, unimaginably stupid, or both. And I'm leaning towards both because here's the thing, Greg. This podcast cannot recommend hiring prostitutes. It cannot recommend spending tens of thousands of dollars on prostitutes. But what we really cannot defend or justify or, recommend is then claiming those expenses as legitimate business expenses to the IRS. No, it's as if Hunter Biden, in every possible circumstance, makes the worst choice possible. The nonsense claim that, the exotic dancer was, paid for artwork. Look, I'm not going to argue about whether what she does is considered a form of art, but you cannot claim that as a deduction or tell that to the IRS. You cannot, there's all, paying for the airline tickets to take an exotic dancer from Los Angeles to New York. No, these are not legitimate expenses for your business. And payments, various women added up to $683,000 over the span of 4 years. By the way, he also spent $400,000 on clothing and accessories over 4 years. Greg, I'm not going to guess the retail value of what you're wearing right now. I'm just going to say that I would probably find it very challenging to spend $100,000 on clothes over the course of a year. I mean, just how much do you need to wear? He also withdrew $1.6 million in cash over this 4-year span. Now, Greg, I'm not super familiar with the drug trade, but do they take credit cards?
I honestly don't know. I'm proud to say.
A lot of dealers. Can you pay for like cocaine or something with a check? My guess is no.
Probably
my guess
not.
is they're really not going to take any personal checks. So my guess is you're going to need cash So when you've withdrawn $1.6 million in cash over a 4-year span, that's like $400,000 a year. That's a lot of cash to withdraw. I think even Bob Menendez would say, whoa, 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 nobody needs that much cash. Anyway, so why does this matter? Well, besides the fact that the president, who's assured us that his son has done nothing wrong, is now facing his second round of indictments, I think this matters a great deal because, Joe Biden spent much of his career trying to enact harsher penalties for drug use, drug possession, and drug dealing. Now, we know from his own words, Hunter Biden has broken America's drug laws many, many, many times. And he has never suffered a single legal consequence because of that. Joe Biden has spent much of his career attempting to restrict Americans' constitutionally protected Second Amendment rights. So when Hunter Biden lies to a federally licensed gun dealer, when he makes a false claim on the federal firearms application used to screen applicants, and when he has possession of an illegally obtained gun, all charges against him, all with multiple year penalties, it matters. When Joe Biden to this very day argues that the reason the U.S. has a deficit and debt problem is because the rich aren't paying their fair share. By the way, that's not true. As we've talked on this podcast many times, it's because of our entitlement programs. But Biden runs around the country saying the rich aren't paying their fair share. And according to the IRS and the Department of Justice and a California grand jury, Hunter Biden hasn't paid his taxes, right? The entire life of Hunter Biden is a giant demonstration that laws only apply to the little people. That if you have a famous last name and a father who's either a powerful senator, powerful vice president, presidential candidate, or president, they will find ways to avoid holding you accountable for the crimes you have committed. That's extremely legitimate issue. It's a live issue for 2024. And I got to point out, all those Democrats out there, Kamala Harris doesn't have this problem. Gavin Newsom doesn't have this problem. No other Democrat in the country has that problem. And oh, by the way, almost every other Democrat in the country is younger than 81 years old.
Well, a few thoughts here. First of all, not only do we not encourage Hunter Biden's behavior, we enthusiastically discourage it for a variety of reasons. Number two, Abby Lowell, who is Hunter Biden's attorney and has been in Washington forever. In fact, he was Democratic counsel during the House Clinton impeachment hearings, which, if you're really feeling old, was 25 years ago this month that Clinton was impeached. But he says, based on the facts and the law, if Hunter Biden's last name was anything other than Biden, the charges in Delaware and now California would not have been brought. No, they would have been brought several years ago, as a matter of fact, and they would have been clamped down on pretty hard because, you think of people like Wesley Snipes, who spent time in prison. Remember the first guy that won Survivor and then decided not to report it on his income tax return? He ended up going to prison. People go to prison for not paying their taxes. And so Hunter Biden thinks he gets special treatment, but Abby Lowell is convinced that he's the victim here.
Yeah, I mean, the idea that you can look at Hunter Biden, they're picking on him. That's really remarkable, and you're just basically bending over backwards to, excuse him. But here's the other thing, like you want to talk about special treatment because they're the president's son or former vice president's son. Chances are, if you're out there defending Hunter Biden, you wouldn't be defending Hunter Biden if his last name wasn't Biden.
Yeah, flip the parties and you'd see where it would go. So, of course, now you've got rumor time, Jim. Some say that this means ultimately Joe Biden won't run, and other people are saying, they only timed this so he wouldn't testify to the House committee next week behind closed doors or later this month, whenever that's supposed to be. Should we be reading into it, or should we just take this at face value?
I am skeptical because I don't really think there's a particularly good time for this to come out, to be revealed. Look, I think, the more likely scenario is that this is when the grand jury came back with this decision. They tried to reach a deal. I think David Weiss, was reluctant to bring a big, messy case against the president's son. What's happened has happened. It's clear. It's obvious. And in today's Morning Jolt, I'd written that, Hunter Biden in almost every conceivable moment of his life, given two choices, has made the wrong choice and picked the wrong path. As much as, Joe Biden deserves to be held accountable, and the payments to Joe Biden seem very suspicious and all of that. Joe Biden is 81 years old. Could Hunter Biden just stay out of trouble for a little bit of time? Don't you think he owes that to his father? We can argue about whether Joe Biden has enabled his son. I think there's a strong case to be made for that. But Hunter Biden wants to have this fight, wants to have this war, and wants to make the same old vast right-wing conspiracy defense that Hillary Clinton deployed back in 1998. And it's like, could you just take responsibility for once in your life? Is it too much to ask? Apparently it is, Greg.
And to think how close we came to that plea deal going through and nobody knowing the difference here. But two guys at the IRS who saw what was happening and one judge who was paying attention in Delaware, Judge Noreka. And now we're in a very different place here at the end of the year. But we'll see where it goes. All right, let's talk about our great sponsor for today, and that is 4Patriots, makers of the Patriot Power Generator 2000X. Look, solar generators charge more devices for longer in a blackout. And with this new and improved Patriot Power Generator, it's got double the capacity, more peak power than before, new expandable capability for even more power. So when that power goes out, and let's face it, you never know when that's going to happen, you'll be ready to power your fridge, your freezer, medical devices, other appliances, and a whole lot more. It comes with a solar panel, again, solar powered, so you never need gas. You never have to pay for that gas. It's portable, it's fume-free, it's silent, and it's safe. 100% satisfaction guaranteed. And don't forget about their survival food kits, their Patriot Power Blender, the Sun Kettle Solar Cooker, and a whole lot more. So visit 4patriots.com/martini to see this week's discounts and deals before they are gone, and get free shipping on orders over $97. Save more and get peace of mind now by going to the number 4patriots.com/martini. That's 4patriots.com/martini. All right, Jim, on to our bad martini now. And CAIR is the focus of this one. CAIR is the Council on American Islamic Relations. Now, many of us have accused CAIR for many years of being way too chummy and way too quick to defend terrorists and way too quick to denounce those who denounce terrorists. But CAIR's executive director, a guy named Nihad Awad, was speaking at a convention not long ago. And this is how he described what happened on October 7th.
The people of Gaza only decided to break the siege, the walls of the concentration camp, on October 7th. And yes, I was happy to see people breaking the siege and throwing down the shackles of their own land and walk free into their lands that they were not allowed to walk in. And yes, the people of Gaza have the right to self-defense, have the right to defend themselves. And yes, Israel as an occupying power does not have that right to self-defense.
Now, up until that speech getting out, CAIR was very welcome at the White House. They were partnering with the White House in an effort to come up with a strategy to combat Islamophobia in the country. But now, Josh Kraushaar of Jewish Insider is reporting that, quote, the White House scrubbed a mention of the Council on American Islamic Relations from an anti-Semitism fact sheet and pledged that the group has no involvement in efforts to draft a national Islamophobia strategy. Trying to do their best Obi-Wan Kenobi Jedi mind trick there, but I don't think a lot of people are going to fall for it.
No, and it's really infuriating. And one of the reasons one of the reasons these sorts of double standards and problems are allowed to fester for so long is that people who should know better, people who should have the courage to stand up and say specifically, this is a terrible thing that this head of CAIR has said. This is unacceptable. This justifies all kinds of suspicions about the Council on American Islamic Relations that have been percolating for a long time. They've been the first to argue you cannot judge American Muslims, you cannot judge American Arabs, you cannot judge those people by suspecting them of being sympathetic to terrorists. And here's one of their big kahunas coming out and saying, I am sympathetic to terrorists. Now, we've been all covering these sorts of things for a long time, going back probably to 9/11. Council on American Islamic Relations is not new to most people. And they've pretty much been the first to stand up to accuse somebody else of Islamophobia, to accuse somebody else of having reflexive anti-Muslim hatred on the most mundane of proposals, almost anything designed to fight Islamist terrorism. And yet, look, Islamophobia exists in this country. We saw that awful case of that landlord beating that kid to death. So the case of those 3 college guys who were shot up in Vermont. Sounds like one of them may never walk again. It exists. It would be good of us to say, hey, you shouldn't do that. We're really mad at Hamas, just as we were really mad at Al-Qaeda at ISIS and every other Islamist terrorist group on the world. But it doesn't mean you take it out on the Muslim family down the street. But CAIR never just stopped at that. CAIR always was quick to attribute you of being hateful and having malevolent darkness in your heart, if you dared say. And then one of the guys in charge of CAIR comes out and starts explaining away and excusing what Hamas did. Shut the heck up, CAIR. I don't want to hear from you ever again. You have confirmed everybody's worst suspicion that you really are apologists for terrorists, that you do talk out of both sides of your mouth, and that you gave a pro forma denunciation of Islamist terrorist groups. But deep down, at least one of your group perfectly had no problem with it whatsoever and was cheering along. For shame. And shame on you, Biden administration. You can see this as much as anybody else, and your idea is, let's just erase it off the White House, pretend it didn't happen. And let's just hope nobody notices. Guess what, people? They noticed. CAIR has been skating on thin ice for a very long time, and they have fallen through the ice right now. And every news organization that has used CAIR as a source to decide who's Islamophobic and who's not, first, they should cease that ever before, and I think they owe an apology to everybody else. Because an accusation from CAIR might as well be an accusation from Hamas.
Well, usually these sorts of things come out not in English. The English statements are the ones that are usually supposed to be moderate and balanced, and then they go say something completely different in Arabic or whatever language they're in. This time it got said in English, and it's going to be very hard for them to shy away from it. Not only them, but the administration for the relationship they, at least up until yesterday, seemed to have with this outfit. So we'll see what they do next.
Hey, y'all, this is Sarah from The Sarah Carter Show. Thanks for listening to 3 Martini Lunch. We could all benefit from heart-healthy energy, especially in this busy time of the year. One of the best ways to do that is to support your blood pressure and circulation with Super Beets Heart Chews. Paired with a healthy lifestyle, the antioxidants in Super Beets are clinically shown to be nearly 2 times more effective at promoting normal blood pressure than healthy lifestyle alone. And let me tell you something. When I'm traveling to New York, when I'm moving around the country, I need to feel optimum. I want to stay healthy and I want to feel energized. And I do that with Super Beets Heart Chews. I absolutely love the flavor. I know you will too. And I know you're going to feel great. They are a convenient way to support healthy blood pressure. Super Beets Heart Chews are plant-based and easy to add to your routine. No pills to swallow, no ingredients to mix or prepare. Double your potential with Super Beets Heart Chews. Get a free 30-day supply of Super Beets Heart Chews and a free full-size bag of turmeric chews valued at $25 by going to americalovesbeets.com. Get this exclusive offer only at americalovesbeets.com. That's americalovesbeets.com.
All right, Jim, on to our crazy/bad martini now. And this one's got a lot of layers to it, but the basic idea here is that it wasn't just the FBI. It wasn't just the Department of Homeland Security. It was also the Pentagon who was dealing in speech suppression online. Michael Schellenberger of the Twitter files with a long multi-tweet explanation of this. And basically, there was this organization called the Cyber Threat Intelligence League. It sounds like it's a competition. This week's cyber threat matchup is between France and Japan. Let's see who comes out on top. But no, their idea was to deal with cyber threats. But like everything else in bureaucracy, there was a lot of overlap, and it turns out this organization wasn't needed at all. So they, of course, didn't want to kill it, so they gave it a different job, dealing with disinformation. And so not only did the Pentagon, through the Cyber Threat Intelligence League, start to seek out what it wanted to flag as disinformation, this was an international effort to do so as well. Schellenberger refers specifically to a situation during COVID where folks involved with this program were trying to crack down on those who were trying to initiate physical gatherings. They were anti-lockdown. And so when one member shared news about a call for anti-lockdown protests, somebody says, "Let me see if I can get the Facebook user suspended." He goes on to say that if there were any government officials officially connected to any effort to take that down, that could also constitute a violation of the right to assembly. So obviously attacking speech. We'll see what more details come out here. But the government, once again, with egg all over its face. And we'll see if there's ever going to be any consequences for any of this.
You know, Greg, it feels like we have very similar debates about the First Amendment and foreign disinformation over and over again. And to me, I'm surprised we have such debates because, to me, the lines seem pretty clear. You listening to this podcast, assuming you're an American citizen, as the overwhelming majority are, you have full constitutional rights, including the First Amendment, and the government can take no action to restrict your speech. Government shall make no law restricting religion, etc. If you are a foreign citizen, living abroad, you may have different rights. You do not have the full constitutional rights. And the Internet Research Agency, based out in St. Petersburg, the primary internet propaganda organ of Vladimir Putin, et cetera, they do not have full constitutional rights. Doesn't apply to them, right? So our government may well have an interest in attempting to shut down, interfere, minimize, or otherwise interdict foreign disinformation efforts. Yeah, okay, I'm fine with that. That's because if you're an American citizen, that shouldn't be affecting you. It is, you have a right to say, I think Vladimir Putin is swell, or Xi Jinping, or even Hamas. Although if you're defending Hamas, and saying, oh, they're swell, it would not surprise me if law enforcement began to take a little bit of curiosity about whether you actually supported terrorism as well. But that's another conversation for another time. It's fully within the rights of the U.S. government to say to Twitter or to Facebook or to any one of these social media companies, hey, we have determined that these accounts are actually run by a hostile foreign power. They're spreading disinformation, they're spreading propaganda, and we'd really like you to turn it down, to take it down. That's perfectly fine. That's all well within the rights. I don't think foreign governments have First Amendment rights. You as a citizen, though, do, and there really shouldn't be any blurring of this line. The U.S. government, no matter how much it doesn't like what you're saying, unless it's got some sort of provable thing of this is if we allow this person to say this, some sort of violence is going to occur. Supreme Court has laid out these rules in this very clearly, right? It's got to be very specific if you're inciting others to violence. And yet we find ourselves in this situation over and over again. Back when the singing disinformation expert, whatever her name was, she wanted to set one up at DHS, and people pointed out the State Department already has a part of it that's designed to fight foreign government disinformation. There really wasn't any need to have one at DHS because DHS deals with domestic law enforcement. DHS largely, not entirely, obviously they have Border Patrol and stuff like that, but largely what DHS is dealing with is domestic law enforcement and U.S. citizens. And DHS or nobody else in the government should be setting up anything where they run around and say, you know what, we think that U.S. citizen's tweet is inappropriate. We'd like that taken down. And yet that's where we appear to be, including this Pentagon. Now, if the Pentagon wants to take on foreign government disinformation, go right ahead. That's totally legitimate. But American citizens, hey, Constitution protects people's right to say things that are stupid or objectionable, or even if they're singing hosannas for the worst hostile foreign states. You have the right to go out and say North Korea is swell. Although, as we learned earlier this year, you probably don't want to try to defect there.
We've had hearings. I think it's pretty clear what was happening with the FBI and DHS, with the old regime at Twitter. And as more comes out on this story, we'll see to the extent to which they were in contact with the social media companies. But very, very interesting. And again, good that it's coming to light, but definitely bad to know what the government was doing with our tax dollars against our own freedom. So, Jim, on that gloomy note, we head into the weekend. Have a great weekend, and I'll see you on Monday.
The only thing I can say at this time of year, Greg, is that if you ask for miracles, I give you the FBI. Yes. Have a good weekend, everybody.
Jim Garrity, National Review. I'm Greg Corombos, Radio America. Thanks so much for being with us today. Thanks for subscribing to the podcast. If you don't already do that, please subscribe. Tell some friends to do it as well. We'd love to have them with us. Also, thanks for your 5-star ratings and your kind reviews. Please keep those coming. They really do help us a lot. So also remember that you can get us on your home devices. All you have to say is play 3 Martini Lunch podcast. Follow us both on X. He's at Jim Garrity. I'm at Dateline_DC. Have a terrific weekend and join us again on Monday for the next 3 Martini Lunch.